Welcome, dear traveler. Welcome to a place of rest. The day is done. The noise of the world has faded. Whatever burdens you have carried through the hours of sunlight, whatever worries have clung to your shoulders like heavy cloaks, you may set them down now. There is nothing you need to do here. There is nowhere you need to go. There is no one you need to be other than exactly who you are right here, right now, in this quiet, breathing dark. You are safe here. You are held here. This is a sanctuary of stories, a place where we unlock the great minds of history, not to study them, but to rest with them, to walk beside them, to let their wisdom wash over us like a gentle tide, smoothing the rough edges of our thoughts until only peace remains. We have built this space for you, a temple of sound, a refuge of narrative, where the chaotic currents of modern life cannot reach you. Here, the only clock that ticks is the rhythm of your own heart. Here, the only deadline is the moment your eyes grow heavy and sleep arrives to claim you. So settle in now. Find that position of comfort that your body has been craving all day. Feel the surface beneath you rising to support you. Let your shoulders soften, dropping away from your ears. Unclench your jaw. Let your hands rest open and empty. Let your breath find its natural rhythm, in and out, like the slow, steady waves of a midnight sea. Imagine the tension draining out of your fingertips, out of your toes, dissolving into the air like smoke. You are becoming lighter. You are becoming softer. You are returning to yourself. Tonight, we are going on a journey. We are going to travel back through the mists of time, back across the centuries, to a land of golden sun and jasmine-scented nights. We are going to ancient India. We are going to walk in the footsteps of a man who changed the world, not with a sword, but with silence. Not with power, but with compassion so vast it could hold the entire universe. His life was not a thunderclap, but a dawn, gradual, inevitable rise of light that illuminated the dark corners of human suffering. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. But the world would come to know him by another name, a name that sounds like a breath, a name that means simply the one who woke up, the Buddha. His story is one of the greatest adventures of the human spirit. It is the story of a prince who had everything the world says we should want: palaces, gold, power, pleasure, and walked away from it all in the middle of the night because he knew that true peace could not be built on things that fade. It is the story of a man who sat beneath a tree, determined not to move until he had solved the riddle of human suffering. It is the story of a heart that broke open to the pain of the world, and in breaking, found a love that has no limit. It is a story of courage, of radical kindness, and of the discovery that freedom is not found in conquering the world, but in conquering the self. Perhaps you have heard bits and pieces of this story before. Perhaps you have seen the statues, the serene face, the half-closed eyes, the faint, knowing smile. But tonight, we will not just talk about him. We will walk with him. We will feel the dust of the Indian roads beneath our feet. We will smell the scent of sandalwood and wood smoke in the evening air. We will sit with him under the Bodhi Tree as the stars wheel overhead, and we will listen to the silence that spoke louder than any words. We will see him not as a god on a pedestal, but as a man seeking truth, struggling with doubt, and finding a way through the tangled forest of the mind. This is a story for your heart. It is a story to remind you that peace is possible, that compassion is your true nature, that no matter how lost you may feel, there is a path that leads home. Whether you are seeking sleep or seeking solace or seeking wisdom, this story holds medicine for the soul. It whispers that suffering is real, but so is the end of suffering. It whispers that you too have the seed of awakening within you, waiting for the rain of kindness to help it grow. So close your eyes now. Let the darkness behind your eyelids become a warm, velvet curtain. Let the sound of my voice be a thread you can hold on to as we drift away from the present moment. Let us go back to the foot of the Himalayas, back to a time of kings and sages, back to the beginning of the awakening. The world of today is far away. The noise of traffic, the glow of screens, the demands of tomorrow are all fading. There is only the ancient earth, the whispering trees, and the story that is about to unfold. Breathe deeply and let the journey begin. Imagine a world of green, deep, verdant, endless green. This is the northern plain of India in the 6th century before the Common Era. It is a land of mighty rivers, the Ganges, the Rohini, flowing slowly through forests thick with teak and sal trees. The air is heavy with humidity and the scent of damp earth. The sun is a fierce golden eye in a sky of impossible blue. It is a time when the veil between the human and the divine feels thin, when every river is a goddess, every tree houses a spirit, and the smoke of sacrificial fires rises from 1,000 altars to feed the gods. The forests are alive with the chanting of hermits, and the cities are bustling with the energy of a civilization in bloom. Here, in the foothills of the great snow-capped Himalayas, lay the kingdom of the Shakyas. Their capital was Kapilavastu, a city of red brick walls and towering gates, a jewel set in the emerald forest. It was a proud kingdom, home to a warrior clan known for their courage and their honor. The streets were lined with mango trees that offered shade to the merchants and soldiers who walked beneath them. Elephants, adorned with silk and bells, lumbered through the thoroughfares, their trunks swaying. The air smelled of jasmine, cardamom, and the sweet smoke of incense drifting from the temples. It was a place of abundance, where the rice fields stretched to the horizon and the granaries were always full. Ruling over this kingdom was King Suddhodana. He was a man of power, a man of the sword, a man of the law. He stood tall and broad-shouldered, his beard dark and trimmed, his eyes sharp with the intelligence of a ruler who must protect his people. He wanted his kingdom to be strong, his treasury to be full, and his lineage to be secure. He was a good king, respected by his subjects and feared by his enemies. But he was a king of this world. He believed in strength. He believed in legacy. He believed that happiness was found in order, in prosperity, and in the continuity of his bloodline. His queen was named Maya. Queen Maya. Her name means illusion or enchantment, but her presence was as real and grounding as the earth itself. She was said to be a woman of extraordinary grace, her beauty like the moon in a cloudless sky. Her skin was radiant, her voice soft as running water. She was known for her boundless charity. No beggar ever left her presence empty-handed. She moved through the palace like a gentle breeze, bringing peace wherever she went. But for many years, a shadow lay over the royal couple. Despite their love, despite their prayers, despite the offerings made to every god, the king and queen had no child. The throne had no heir. The halls of the palace were silent where the laughter of a child should have been. Then one night, during the midsummer festival, Queen Maya had a dream. It was a dream unlike any she had ever known, vivid, lucid, shimmering with a strange, celestial light. In this dream, she was carried by 4 heavenly spirits to a high mountain plateau in the Himalayas. They bathed her in a clear, sacred lake to purify her, and dressed her in heavenly flowers and divine robes. And then, a magnificent white elephant, holding a white lotus flower in its trunk, descended from the sky. It circled her 3 times, trumpeting softly, and then gently entered her side. The dream was not frightening. It was filled with a profound sense of holiness and destiny. When she woke, the scent of the dream still lingered in the room, a fragrance like jasmine and rain, sweeter than any perfume of the earth. She knew in her bones that something momentous had begun. She went to the king and told him of the vision. The king summoned the court sages, the wisest Brahmins in the land, to interpret the dream. They listened gravely, stroking their beards, their eyes widening in wonder as the queen spoke. Finally, they announced, "Your Majesty, rejoice! The queen has conceived a son, but this will be no ordinary child. This child is destined for greatness beyond measure. He will be a light to the clan and a glory to the kingdom." News of the miraculous conception spread, and then came the great sage Asita, a hermit who lived high in the mountains and rarely descended to the world of men. He came to the palace, his face weathered by wind and sun, his hair matted, his eyes burning with inner fire. He asked to see the child. When he looked at the infant in the queen's womb with his spiritual vision, tears streamed down his weathered cheeks. He wept openly. "Why do you weep, great sage?" the king asked, fearful. "Is there misfortune ahead? Is the child cursed?" "I weep not for the child, but for myself," Asita replied softly, wiping his tears. "For I am old, and I will not live to see what this child becomes. O king, listen well. 2 paths lie before him. If he chooses the life of a householder, he will become a universal monarch, a Chakravartin, a king who rules the 4 quarters of the earth with justice and wisdom. He will conquer without a sword and rule with righteousness. But If he sees the suffering of the world and chooses to leave the household life, he will become a Buddha, an awakened one. He will remove the veil of ignorance from the eyes of the world. He will show humanity the way out of sorrow. King Suddhodana felt a chill in his heart. A Buddha? A holy man? A beggar with a bowl wandering the forests? No, he was a king. He wanted an heir. He wanted a son who would conquer lands, not conquer himself. He wanted a son who would sit on a throne of gold, not a seat of grass. He wanted a dynasty that would last 1,000 years. From that moment on, a seed of fear was planted in the king's heart, a fierce determination to steer his son away from the spiritual path, to anchor him firmly to the earth with chains of pleasure and power. He vowed that his son would never know why anyone would want to leave the world. The time of birth drew near. Following the custom of her people, Queen Maya set out to return to her parents' home for the delivery. The royal procession moved slowly through the lush countryside, surrounded by guards and attendants. Midway between the two cities, they came to a beautiful garden grove called Lumbini. It was spring. The sal trees were in full bloom, heavy with sweet-smelling flowers that carpeted the ground. Bees hummed in the branches, drunk on nectar. Birds sang songs of welcome. The air was cool and fragrant. Entranced by the beauty, the queen asked to stop. She stepped down from her palanquin and walked into the grove, seeking the shade of the great trees. She reached up to hold the branch of a sal tree for support, and as she did, the birth began. There, standing beneath the canopy of flowers, supported by the earth and the trees, she brought forth her son. It was not a birth of pain, but of grace. Legends say it was a birth of light. They say the infant prince stood upon the earth and took 7 steps to the north. With each step, a lotus flower bloomed instantly beneath his tiny feet to catch him, ensuring he never touched the bare ground. He looked out at the world with clear, unclouded eyes and declared with the voice of a lion, "I am the chief of the world. This is my last birth. There will be no more becoming." The gods themselves rained down flowers from the heavens, and the earth trembled in joy. But joy and sorrow are often woven together in the tapestry of life. 7 days after the birth of this wondrous child, Queen Maya, having fulfilled her purpose, closed her eyes and slipped away from this world. She died peacefully, leaving her son to the care of her sister, Mahapajapati, who loved him as her own. The kingdom mourned their beloved queen, but they rejoiced in the prince who had survived. The king named him Siddhartha. Siddhartha, it means he who achieves his aim, or he whose wish is fulfilled. And so began the life of the prince. King Suddhodana, remembering the prophecy, vowed to build a world so perfect, so beautiful, so devoid of pain that his son would never ever think of leaving it. He would build a cage, a golden, glittering, magnificent cage. He commanded that the prince be surrounded only by youth, health, and beauty. He built 3 palaces for boys, one for each season. One for the winter, lined with warm cedar and rich tapestries to keep out the chill. One for the summer, built of cool marble, with fountains playing in every courtyard to mist the air and channels of cool water running through the floors. And one for the rainy season, sheltered and cozy, where the sound of the monsoon rain on the roof was a lullaby, but no mud or storm could ever enter. Imagine these palaces. Imagine the walls inlaid with semi-precious stones, lapis lazuli, carnelian, jade. Imagine gardens where the flowers were changed every day so the prince would never see a fading bloom or a withered leaf. Imagine pools filled with blue, red, and white lotuses, their scent drifting through the open windows. Musicians played soft melodies on flutes and venas day and night. Servants hovered, ready to fulfill a wish before it was even spoken. Only the young, the beautiful, and the healthy were allowed in the prince's presence. No old person, no sick person, no sign of death was ever permitted to enter the palace gates. Siddhartha grew up in this paradise. He was a beautiful child, strong, intelligent, with eyes as dark and deep as forest pools. He excelled at his lessons. He learned to ride, to shoot an arrow, to wrestle, to recite the ancient Vedas. He was the pride of the Shakya clan. Yet, even amidst the laughter and the games, he was different. He did not delight in rough play or cruelty. There is a story told of his childhood that reveals his heart. One day, his cousin Devadatta shot a swan out of the sky with an arrow. The bird fell, fluttering and bleeding, into the garden where Siddhartha was walking. While Devadatta ran to claim his prize, Siddhartha ran to the bird. He gently pulled the arrow from its wing. He pressed cool leaves to the wound to stop the bleeding. He stroked the terrified creature, calming it with touch. When Devadatta arrived and demanded the bird, claiming it was his because he had shot it, Siddhartha refused. "No," he said firmly. "If you had killed it, it might be yours. But it is alive, and life belongs to those who seek to preserve it, not those who seek to destroy it." The matter was taken to the court of wise men, and they agreed. The savior has a greater right than the slayer. But there was peace in him, a sensitivity that troubled his father. One day, as a young boy, he was watching a plowing festival in the fields. While his father and the other men celebrated the turning of the earth, young Siddhartha sat beneath the shade of a rose apple tree. He watched the plow blade cut through the soil. He saw the earth turning over, and he saw a worm cut in half by the blade. He saw a bird swoop down and eat the worm. He saw a hawk swoop down and catch the bird. While others cheered the harvest, the young prince felt a piercing sorrow for the worm, for the grass that was uprooted, for the tiny lives disturbed. He saw the hidden cost of life. He saw how one life lived on the death of another. He closed his eyes and, without being taught, slipped into a deep state of natural meditation. His breath slowed. His mind became still. A profound compassion radiated from him. When his nurses found him hours later, the shadows of the other trees had moved with the sun, but the shadow of the rose apple tree had stayed still, shielding the holy child from the heat. The king redoubled his efforts. More music, more dancing girls, more feasts. He married Siddhartha at a young age to the beautiful Princess Yasodhara, a woman of grace and spirit who loved him deeply. They lived in a world of absolute pleasure. For years, Siddhartha knew nothing of hunger, nothing of cold, nothing of tears. But the human spirit cannot be fed on sugar alone. Deep within the prince, beneath the layers of silk and perfume, hunger was growing. A hunger for truth, a hunger for something real. He would look out from the high terraces of his palace, gazing at the distant purple hills and wonder, is this all there is? Is life just a series of pleasant sensations until we fade away? The cage was golden, but it was still a cage, the four sights that changed everything. Years passed like a dream. The prince was now a young man of 29. He had a wife he adored, Yasodhara, and a newborn son named Rahula. By every measure of the world, his cup was full. It was overflowing. He had wealth beyond counting, a kingdom waiting for him, and a family who cherished him. The palace was a fortress of delight, designed to keep reality at bay. But the soul has its own seasons, and the winter of discontent was settling upon Siddhartha's heart. The music of the palace began to sound discordant to his ears. The endless feasts tasted like ash. The laughter of the dancing girls seemed hollow, like the tinkling of glass. He felt a profound restlessness, an itch in his spirit that no luxury could scratch. He would pace the marble floors at night, looking up at the moon, feeling like a stranger in his own life. The perfection of his existence began to feel suffocating. He began to ask to see the city. "I want to see my people," he told his father. "I want to see the world outside these walls. I cannot rule a person I do not know." King Suddhodana panicked. He tried to dissuade him, but the prince was insistent. Finally, the king agreed, but he secretly ordered the city to be cleansed. He commanded that all the old, the sick, and the deformed be hidden away. He ordered the streets swept and decorated with garlands. He wanted his son to see a stage-managed world, a theater of perfection where sorrow did not exist. But truth has a way of finding the seeker. On the appointed day, Siddhartha mounted his chariot. His loyal charioteer Channa took the reins. The great gates of the palace groaned open, and they rolled out into the city of Kapilavastu. The crowds cheered. Flowers were raining down. It seemed like a world of joy. The prince waved to the people, smiling, but his eyes were searching. He was looking for something real behind the pageantry. But as the chariot turned a corner, away from the main procession, the gods, or perhaps just destiny, intervened. The illusion shattered. There, stumbling along the side of the road, was a man. But he was unlike any man Siddhartha had ever seen in the palace. His back was bent like an old bow. He leaned heavily on a staff member, his hands trembling violently. His skin was wrinkled and spotted, hanging loose on his bones like an ill-fitting garment. His hair was sparse and white. He had no teeth. He wheezed as he walked, a pitiable rattling sound. He looked frail, as if a strong wind could blow him away like dried leaf. Siddhartha stared, transfixed. He felt a cold shock run through his veins. He pointed at a shaking finger. "Chana," he whispered. "What is that? What has happened to him? Is this a punishment? Is it a rare misfortune? Why does he look so broken?" Channa looked at the prince with sad eyes. He could not lie. "No, my lord, that is not a punishment. That is old age. It happens to everyone. That man was once a babe, drinking milk. He was once a youth, strong and swift like you. But time devours us all. His strength has fled. His senses are failing. This is the destiny of all who are born." "Everyone?" Siddhartha asked. His voice was barely audible. "Even the king? Even the queen? Even me? Even you, my lord?" Channa replied softly. "No walls can keep out time. Even the strongest warrior must eventually surrender to age." Siddhartha returned to the palace in silence. The food that night tasted like dust. The dancers looked like skeletons adorned with flowers. The knowledge of aging hung over him like a dark cloud. A few days later, he went out again. He had to know. This time, he saw a man lying in the gutter. He was writhing in agony, crying out for help. His body was covered in sores. He was vomiting. He lay in his own filth, helpless, burning with fever. People walked past him, covering their noses. The prince had never seen illness before. He had never seen pain so naked and unhidden. "Channa," Siddhartha cried, "what is this? Why does he suffer so? Why does no one help him?" "This is sickness, my lord," Channa said. "The body is fragile. It is a nest of diseases. At any moment, the balance of humor can break. Health is not a promise, it is a temporary loan. Pain can enter any door uninvited. Even a king can fall ill." Siddhartha felt a wave of nausea. The illusion of the body's invincibility was gone. He realized that beneath the silk robes and the perfumes, his own body was just as vulnerable as the beggar in the street. On the third journey, the lesson was final. They saw a procession moving slowly toward the river. But there was no music, only the sound of wailing. 4 men carried a stiff, unmoving form wrapped in white cloth. They placed it on a pile of wood. They set it on fire. The flames licked at the cloth, consuming the form within. "Channa?" Siddhartha asked, though he already knew the answer in his bones. "What is this?" "This is death, my lord," Channa said gravely. "This is the end of the road. That man can no longer see or hear or feel. His family weeps, but he cannot hear them. He has left this world, and this too awaits us all. The king, the peasant, the warrior, the beggar. Death is the one guest who never knocks, he simply enters. No gate is high enough to keep him out." Siddhartha sat in the chariot, crushed. Sickness, death, these were the realities of life. How could anyone laugh? How could anyone play? How could he sit on a velvet cushion and drink wine when the fire of mortality was burning beneath him? The palace now felt like a prison, a place where people pretended to be immortal while waiting to die. He was in despair. The world seemed like a trap, a slaughterhouse decorated with flowers. But then came the fourth sight. As they were returning, heavy-hearted, Siddhartha saw a man walking toward them. He was dressed in simple robes, the color of turning leaves, ochre, orange. He was barefoot. He held a simple clay bowl. He had no possessions, no home, no family. But his face was a pool of stillness. His eyes were clear and calm, untroubled by the chaos of the world. He walked with gentle dignity, looking neither down in sorrow nor up in pride. He radiated a cool, refreshing peace. He seemed to be in the world, but not burned by it. Amidst the suffering Siddhartha had just witnessed, this man was like a lotus blooming in the mud. "Who is that?" Siddhartha asked, and for the first time there was a spark of hope in his voice. "That is a sadhu, my lord," Channa explained. "A seeker, a homeless one. He has renounced the world to find the deathless. He seeks the truth that lies beyond suffering. He has given up everything to find the only thing that matters." Siddhartha watched the monk until he disappeared into the crowd. And in that moment, the seed that had been planted eons ago burst open. He knew what he had to do. The despair lifted, replaced by a steely determination. There was a way out. There was a path. He could not stay. He could not pretend. He could not be the king of a burning house. He had to find a way out, not just for himself, but for that old man, for that sick man, for that dead man, for everyone. The luxurious life of the palace now seemed trivial, a child's game played while the house was on fire. The prince returned to the palace, but the prince was gone. The seeker had been born. His heart had already left Kapilavastu. His body would soon follow. The night settled over Kapilavastu like a heavy blanket. It was the night of the full moon. The palace was quiet. The musicians had fallen asleep over their instruments. The lamps flickered low, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the heavy, sweet scent of flowers and the silence of deep sleep. Siddhartha stood alone in his chamber. His decision was made. It was a diamond in his chest, hard, clear, unbreakable. But it was also a jagged edge that cut him with every breath. He was leaving. He was leaving the only life he had ever known. He was leaving his power, his comfort, his future as a king. But most painfully of all, he was leaving those he loved. He walked softly to the door of his wife's chamber. He pushed it open just a crack, the hinges silent, oiled for a prince's comfort. The scent of sandalwood and sweet milk drifted out. There, on a bed strewn with jasmine flowers, lay Yasodhara. She was asleep, her breathing soft and rhythmic, her hand curled beside her cheek. Her hair lay loose across the pillow like black silk. And tucked against her, safe in the curve of her arm, was their newborn son, Rahula. Siddhartha looked at them. His heart hammered against his ribs. He loved them. Oh, how he loved them. He wanted to rush into the room, to gather them into his arms, to smell his son's hair, to kiss his wife's forehead one last time. He wanted to wake them and say goodbye. He took a step forward. His foot hovered over the threshold. But he stopped. If I wake them, he thought, I will not be able to leave. Yasodhara's tears will be chains I cannot break. My son's small hand will be an anchor I cannot lift. If I look into their eyes, my resolve will melt. He stood there, trembling. The pain of the moment was physical. It was a tear, but he looked deeper. He saw that if he stayed, he could give them only temporary comfort. He could give them wealth, protection, affection. He could give them a golden cage, but he could not save them from old age. He could not save them from sickness. He could not save them from death. One day Yasodhara would grow old. One day Rahula would suffer. If he truly loved them, he had to leave them to find the cure for their suffering. His leaving was not an abandonment of love. It was the ultimate act of love. He was going into the dark to find the light for them. I go to find the light, he whispered into the darkness, a promise to the sleeping forms. And when I have found it, I will come back and give it to you. I will give you the deathless. He closed the door. He turned his back on his heart. He walked out into the cool night air. Channa, he called softly. His faithful charioteer appeared from the shadows, sleepy and confused. My lord, saddle Kanthaka, Siddhartha said. We leave tonight? Channa saw the look in the prince's eyes of terrifying calm and knew it was useless to argue. He went to the stables. Karthika, the great white stallion, stood waiting. This horse was born on the same day as Siddhartha. They shared a soul. Karthika sensed the gravity of the moment. He allowed the saddle to be placed without a sound. Legends say the gods themselves came down and placed their hands under Kanthaka's hooves so they would make no noise on the cobblestones. Siddhartha mounted. Fly, Kanthaka, he whispered into the horse's silky ear. Carry me to freedom. They rode past the sleeping guards, slumped against the walls. They rode through the great iron gates, which swung open silently as if pushed by unseen hands. They rode through the sleeping streets of the city that was meant to be Siddhartha's kingdom. He did not look back. He could not afford to look back. Out into the countryside they galloped, the wind whipping Siddhartha's silk robes, the moon lighting their path. They rode for miles, putting the world of men behind them. The air grew cooler. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the rustle of the night wind in the trees. Finally, as the first gray light of dawn began to bleed into the eastern sky, painting the horizon in pale violet, they reached the banks of the Anoma River, the river of new beginnings. Siddhartha dismounted. The horse stood steaming in the morning air. Siddhartha stroked Kanthaka's neck, thanking him for his loyalty. He turned to Channa. Take my jewels, he said, unfastening his necklaces of pearls and rubies. He took off his rings. He removed his royal turban. Take my royal robes. He handed them to the weeping servant. Then, standing by the river's edge, he drew his sword. With one swift, decisive motion, he cut off his long, dark, perfumed hair, the sign of his nobility. He threw the hair into the river, watching it float away. He threw the sword into the forest. With that stroke, the prince was gone. He exchanged his silk garments for the rough, ragged robes of a passing hunter. Now he stood barefoot, shorn, penniless, homeless. He had nothing but his body and his quest. "Go back, Channa," he said gently. "Tell my father I am not ungrateful. Tell him I go not out of anger, but out of love. Tell him I will not return until I have conquered death. Tell Yasodhara, tell her I will return." Channa fell to his knees, sobbing. He kissed Siddhartha's feet. Kantaka, the great horse, licked Siddhartha's feet, tears rolling from his large dark eyes. It is said that Kantaka could not bear the separation. His heart broke, and he died there on the riverbank, reborn later in a heavenly realm for his devotion. Siddhartha watched Channa walk away, leading the empty horse, or perhaps leaving the fallen one, a small figure disappearing into the morning mist. He waited until they were gone. He was truly alone. He took a breath. The air smelled of wet earth and wild leaves. It smelled of freedom. It smelled of the vast, terrifying unknown. He turned toward the forest. He took his first step as a nobody. The prince was dead. The seeker had begun to walk. For 6 long years, the man who was once a prince wandered the dust of India. He had traded a palace for the open sky, a bed of silk for a bed of leaves. Imagine the shock to his body. Feet that had only known soft carpets now bled on sharp stones and burned on the hot earth. Skin that had only known sandalwood oil and cool water was now scorched by the sun, bitten by insects, caked with dirt. He slept on the hard ground among the roots of trees, listening to the sounds of tigers in the distance. He begged for his food, holding out a clay bowl at the doors of villagers, accepting whatever scraps were tossed to him, sometimes rotting, sometimes cold, and eating them with gratitude. He learned humility with every mouthful. He was possessed by a single burning question: how can we end suffering? First, he sought out the greatest teachers of his time. He traveled to the hermitages where wise men gathered. He found Alara Kalama, a master of meditation. In the forest hermitages, surrounded by smoke and chanting, Siddhartha learned quickly. His mind was sharp, his discipline absolute. Within weeks, he had mastered the teachings. He learned to enter the sphere of nothingness, a state of profound mental absorption where the world disappears, where the senses shut down, and only a vast, empty void remains. Alara Kalama was astounded. "Stay," he said. "Lead this community with me. You are my equal. You have learned all I have to teach." But Siddhartha shook his head. "No, this peace is temporary. It is beautiful, but it is not the answer. When I come out of the meditation, the problems of old age, sickness, and death return. This is not the cure. It is only an escape. I seek the truth that remains even when the meditation ends." He moved on. He found Uddaka Ramputta, an even greater teacher. He mastered the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, a state so subtle it borders on non-existence, a state of consciousness so refined it cannot even be called consciousness. Again, he was offered leadership. Again, he refused. It was still not the end of suffering. It was just a very high branch on the same tree of existence. So he decided to go further. If the mind was not the answer, perhaps the body was the obstacle. In those days, many believed that the body was a prison for the soul, and that by punishing the body, one could free the spirit. This was the path of asceticism. He joined 5 other ascetics, Kandana, Badia, Vapa, Mahanama, and Asaji, in the deep jungle of Uruvela, and he began a war against his own flesh. It is painful even to speak of what he endured. He began to starve himself. He ate only a single grain of rice a day, then a single sesame seed, then nothing. His body, once golden and strong, wasted away. His ribs were jutted out like the decaying rafters of an old barn. His eyes sunk deep into his skull, like stones in a deep well. If he touched his stomach, he could feel his spine. His hair fell out in clumps. His skin turned gray and dry like dust. He looked like a living skeleton. He sat in the scorching heat of midday without moving, sweat pouring off him, insects biting his flesh. He sat in the freezing rain of midnight without shivering, his teeth chattering, his body numb. He held his breath until he heard the roaring of thunder in his ears and felt as if a sword were piercing his skull. He pushed himself to the very edge of death. He was a skeleton breathing, fueled only by an iron will. But still, the answer did not come. One day, after 6 years of torture, he tried to stand up. His legs gave way. He collapsed in a faint, face down in the dirt. He lay there, closer to death than life. The blackness took him. When he awoke, he lay in the dust. He realized he had failed. He had not found the truth. As he lay there, a thought arose in his weakened mind. I have done everything. I have punished this body until there is nothing left. I have walked the path of the mind to its end, and yet I am no closer to the truth than when I started. There must be another way. Then a memory floated up, a soft, gentle memory from his childhood. He remembered that day under the rose apple tree. He remembered the compassion he felt for the worm. He remembered the natural, effortless peace that had descended on him, a joy that was not born of sensory pleasure, but not born of pain either. It was a joy born of letting go, born of stillness, born of simply being. That was the true way, he thought. That peace was not forced. It was natural. Why do I fear that pleasure? It is not the pleasure of the senses. It is the pleasure of peace. But he was too weak to meditate. He needed strength. He needed food. He realized that a starving body cannot support a focused mind. The instrument must be tuned, not broken. At that moment, a village girl named Sujata appeared. She had come to the forest to make an offering to the tree spirit, fulfilling a vow she had made. She saw the emaciated figure of Siddhartha sitting under the tree and thought he was the spirit itself. She approached him with reverence. She offered him a golden bowl of rice milk, rich, sweet, cooked with cream and honey. Siddhartha looked at the bowl. To eat it would be to break his vows. It would be to admit failure in the eyes of his companions. But he reached out. His trembling skeletal hand took the bowl. He lifted it to his lips. He drank. The nourishment rushed through him like life itself. Strength returned to his limbs. Clarity returned to his mind. He felt the warmth of the food spreading through his body. His 5 companions watched in horror. Look, they sneered. Siddhartha has given up. He has become a glutton. He has returned to luxury. He is eating rich food. They stood up, spat on the ground in disgust, and walked away, leaving him alone. Siddhartha watched them go. He felt no anger. He only felt a quiet, growing resolve. He was alone again, but he was no longer fighting himself. He had found the middle way, a path between the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-torture. He realized that life is like a lute string. If it is wound too tight, it snaps. If it is too loose, it will not play. Only the middle tension makes music. He bathed in the river, washing away the dirt of 6 years. He put on fresh robes. He walked with a new, steady strength toward a great fig tree, a Bodhi tree, standing near the riverbank. The sun was setting. The air was thick with destiny. He knew tonight was night. He would find the answer, or he would die trying. He walked to the tree. The Bodhi tree was vast, its canopy spreading wide like a green umbrella, its roots deep in the ancient soil. Its heart-shaped leaves rustled in the evening breeze, whispering secrets to the wind. It was a tree that had waited for this moment since it was a seed. A grass cutter named Sothia, seeing the radiance of the man, offered him 8 handfuls of kusha grass. Siddhartha accepted them with a bow. He placed the grass at the base of the tree facing east. He arranged it into a seat. He sat down. He crossed his legs. He straightened his spine like a pile of golden coins. He placed his hands in his lap, one over the other. He closed his eyes, and then he made a vow that shook the foundations of the universe. Let my skin and sinews and bones dry up. Let my flesh and blood wither away. But I will not rise from this seat until I have found the truth, until I have attained complete and perfect enlightenment. The earth listened. The birds fell silent. The wind stopped. The entire cosmos seemed to hold its breath, waiting. But as Siddhartha settled into the deep stillness, a shadow fell over his mind. Mara, the Lord of Illusion, the King of Desire and Death, had arrived. Mara is not a monster with horns. Mara is the voice in our own heads that whispers, "You are not enough. You are afraid. You want more." Mara is the force that keeps us asleep. Mara knew that if this man succeeded, the reign of delusion would end. First, Mara tried to seduce him. He sent visions of his beautiful daughters, desire, pining, and lust. They danced before Siddhartha's mind, promising every pleasure, every comfort, every delight the world could offer. They whispered of power, of romance, of the sweet life he had left behind. "Why sit here in the dirt?" they whispered. "Come back to the palace. Come back to love. Come back to life. You can be a king of kings." Siddhartha did not move. He did not even look. He saw them not as beautiful women, but as fleeting, changing forms, bubbles of foam, destined to pop. He saw the skull beneath the skin. He saw that all pleasure eventually turns to pain, if one clings to it. They faded away like mist before the sun. Then Mara grew angry. He summoned his armies. The sky turned black. Bolts of lightning tore the clouds. Demons with 1,000 faces screamed and charged. They rode on beasts of terror. They rained down arrows, spears, burning rocks, and mud. It was a storm of pure terror, designed to break the mind. But Siddhartha sat in his bubble of peace. He did not fight. He simply rested in love. He met the hatred with compassion. And as the weapons entered his field of compassion, a miracle happened. The arrows turned into lotus flowers. The burning rocks turned into jasmine balls. The mud turned into sandalwood powder. The weapons fell gently at his feet, an offering of beauty. The hate could not touch him, because there was no hate in him to resonate with. Finally, Mara stood alone before him. He played his last card, doubt. "Who are you?" Mara roared. "Who are you to claim this seat of enlightenment? You are just a man. You are a prince who ran away. You have no merit. You have no right. Who is your witness? Who will testify that you are worthy?" Siddhartha did not speak. He did not argue. He simply moved one hand from his lap. He reached down and touched the ground with his fingertips. "The earth is my witness." It was the Bhumi Sparsha Mudra, the earth-touching gesture. And the ancient earth, which had carried him for lifetimes, which had drunk his blood and his tears in 1,000 battles for truth, responded. It roared. It trembled. "I bear witness," it seemed to say. "He is worthy. He has given himself for eons." Mara, defeated by the weight of truth, vanished like a bad dream. The storm cleared. The moon shone bright and full. Siddhartha was alone. Now the real work has begun. The journey inward, deeper than he had ever gone before. In the first watch of the night, his mind opened like a vast library. He saw his past lives, one by one, 100 by 100, 1,000 by 1,000. He saw himself as a king, a beggar, a tiger, a god. He saw the endless cycle of birth and death, rolling on forever like a wheel of fire. He saw the tears he had shed in all those lives would fill the oceans. He saw the impermanence of every form. He saw that everyone had been and everyone had been him. In the second watch of the night, his vision expanded to the whole universe. He saw the divine eye. He saw all beings rising and falling according to their karma. He saw how actions born of kindness led to light, and actions born of cruelty led to darkness. He saw the web of connection that binds all life together. He saw that no one is separate. We are all waves in the same ocean. Compassion flooded his heart for every suffering being. In the third watch of the night, as the darkness began to thin, he penetrated the deepest secret. He saw the root of it all. He saw pratitya samutpad, dependent origination. He saw how suffering arises from craving, how craving arises from ignorance. He saw the chain that binds us. Ignorance leads to choices, choices to consciousness, consciousness to mind and body, and so on, until birth, aging, and death. And he saw how to break it. If ignorance ceases, craving ceases. If craving ceases, suffering ceases. He realized the Four Noble Truths. He realized the Eightfold Path. The lock was broken. The door swung open. Just as the morning star Venus rose in the eastern sky, sparkling like a diamond in the dawn, the last trace of ignorance evaporated from his mind. The final veil dropped. He looked up. He saw the star, and he woke up. Siddhartha Gautama was gone. The ego was gone. The I was gone. There was only light. There was only peace. There was only the Buddha, the awakened one. He sat in a state of pure, unconditioned freedom. The fires of greed, hatred, and delusion were extinguished. He was free. He touched the earth again, and he spoke his first words of freedom. "House builder, you are seen. You will not build this house again. Your rafters are broken. Your ridgepole is shattered. My mind has reached the unconditioned. I have attained the end of craving." The sun rose over the Ganges plain, but it was a new sun, shining on a new world. The awakening happened. A light had been lit that would never go out. For 7 weeks, the Buddha sat near the Bodhi Tree. He sat in the bliss of liberation. He gazed at the tree with gratitude without blinking for 7 days. He walked back and forth on a path of jewels. He was drinking the nectar of peace. He had found what he sought. The burden was down. But then a thought arose, a hesitation. "This truth I have found is deep," he thought. "It is subtle. It goes against the stream of the world. The world is lost in attachment. This truth requires letting go. The world loves noise. This truth is silence. Who will understand? If I teach and they do not understand, it will only be a weariness for me. Perhaps it is better to remain silent." He inclined toward silence. He inclined toward remaining a solitary Buddha, resting in his own peace. But compassion has its own gravity. High in the heavens, the great god Brahma Sahampati saw the Buddha's mind inclining toward silence. He was terrified. "The world is lost," he cried. "The world is destroyed. The mind of the perfect one inclines to inaction. The light has come, but it will not shine." In a flash of light, Brahma appeared before the Buddha. He was radiant, magnificent. He knelt on one knee. He joined his palms. "Lord," he pleaded, "please teach the Dharma. There are beings with only a little dust in their eyes. They are falling because they have not heard the truth. But if they hear it, they will understand. Please open the door to the deathless." The Buddha listened. He looked out over the world with his Buddha eye. He saw humanity like a pond of lotuses. Some lotuses were buried deep in the mud. Some were resting on the water. But some were rising out of the water, clean and ready to bloom in the sun. They just needed the light. They just needed the teaching. "Open are the doors to the deathless," the Buddha declared. "Let those who have ears release their faith. I will teach." He thought of his 5 former companions, the ascetics who had abandoned him. "They are pure of heart," he thought. "They have strived long. I will teach them first." He stood up. He took his bowl and his robes, and he began to walk. He walked nearly 150 miles to the holy city of Varanasi, to a deer park in Sarnath. It was a long walk, but his steps were light. He was carrying the medicine for the world's sickness. Along the way, he met a naked ascetic named Upaka, who was struck by the Buddha's radiance. "Who is your teacher?" Upaka asked. "I have no teacher," the Buddha replied. "I am the awakened one." Upaka shook his head in disbelief and walked on, the first person to miss the Dharma. When he arrived at the deer park, the sun was setting. The deer were grazing peacefully under the trees. The 5 ascetics saw him coming in the distance. They hardened their hearts. "Here comes the glutton," they said. "Here comes the failure, Siddhartha. Let us not greet him. Let us not stand up. We will just set out a seat, nothing more. He is no longer one of us." But as the Buddha approached, his radiance was too great. His love was a physical force. It melted their resolve like wax in the sun. Without realizing it, one stood up to take his bowl. Another prepared his seat. Another brought water for his feet. They bowed. They investigated his face and saw that it was not the face of the man they knew. It was the face of Infinite. They sat around him, and as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of saffron and violet, the Buddha began to speak. The air shimmered. "Listen," he said gently. "The deathless has been found." He taught them the middle way, avoiding the extremes of indulgence and torture. And then he turned the wheel of Dharma. He taught the 4 noble truths. First, the truth of dukkha, suffering. Life involves dissatisfaction. It is not just pain, it is the subtle sense that nothing is ever quite enough. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering. Being separated from what we love is suffering. Being with what we dislike is suffering. Even pleasure is suffering because it changes and fades. Second, the truth of the cause. Suffering has a cause. It is craving. It is the thirst for pleasure, the thirst for existence, the thirst for non-existence. It is the sticky attachment to things that are constantly changing. It is wanting the world to be other than it is. Third, the truth of cessation. Suffering can end. It is not eternal. When craving is completely let go of, when the fire is blown out, there is peace. There is nirvana. Freedom is possible right here and now. Fourth, the truth of the path. There is a way to achieve this peace. It is the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. It is a path of ethics, meditation, and wisdom. As he spoke, the ancient dust fell from the eyes of Kundana, the eldest ascetic. He listened, not just with his ears, but with his heart. He saw the truth of impermanence. Whatever has the nature of arising, Kundana realized, has the nature of ceasing. He broke through the stream. He entered the path of awakening. The Buddha smiled. "Kundana has understood," he said. "Kundana has understood." The first disciple was born. The Sangha, the community, had begun. The wheel had turned, and it would never stop rolling. The teaching had passed from one mind to another. The flame had been shared, a life of compassion walking with the awakened one. For the next 45 years, the Buddha walked. He did not retreat to a cave. He did not hide in the heavens. He walked the dusty, noisy, chaotic roads of India. He slept in mango groves. He ate whatever was put in his bowl. He was available to everyone: kings and courtesans, murderers and merchants, children and philosophers. His life became a rhythm of compassion, waking before dawn to meditate, walking for alms, teaching the Dhamma, and guiding his monks. He gathered a community around him, the Sangha. Among them were great disciples. There was Ananda, his cousin and beloved attendant, who had a prodigious memory and would go on to recite all the Buddha's teachings at the first council. Ananda was the one who washed the Buddha's feet, who fanned him in the heat, who wept for him in grief and honored him in joy. He was the beloved friend as much as the devoted servant, quick to laugh, quick to cry, and always, always close. To walk with Ananda was to understand what it means to love a teacher completely. There were Sariputta and Moggallana, the two chief disciples, who had once been followers of another wandering teacher before they encountered a young monk named Assaji, one of the original 5 from the deer park, whose radiant bearing convinced them that something extraordinary had entered the world. When Assaji recited just a single verse of the Dharma to Sariputta, of things arising from a cause, the Buddha has told the cause and the cessation too, Sariputta's eyes cleared on the spot. He rushed to his dearest friend Moggallana and shared the verse. Moggallana too was illuminated. Together they walked to find the Buddha, and together they became his 2 greatest monks. Sariputta, supreme in wisdom; Moggallana, supreme in spiritual power. There was Mahakassapa, the ascetic who embraced the strictest discipline. He and the Buddha once exchanged robes, the Buddha offering his own great robe in return for Mahakassapa's rough, worn garment. It was an act of extraordinary intimacy, and Mahakassapa treasured that exchanged robe as long as he lived. It would be Mahakassapa who, in the weeks after the Buddha's passing, gathered 500 enlightened monks and held the first great council, ensuring every word of the teaching was collected, verified, and committed to the living memory of the Sangha. Consider the story of Angulimala. In a dark forest near the town of Savatthi, there lived a man so terrifying that entire villages had been abandoned because of him. His name was Angulimala, which means garland of fingers, because around his neck he wore a grotesque necklace strung with the severed fingers of his victims. He had been a promising student who was framed by jealous classmates before his teacher, and the resulting psychological wound had curdled into madness. He had vowed to kill 1,000 people, and he was up to 999. One more finger, one more life. And that life, according to fate, was to be his own mother's. The Buddha heard this. He took his bowl, adjusted his robes, and walked alone into the forest toward Angulimala. The king's soldiers had tried to capture him and failed. Villagers would not enter that forest for any price. But the Buddha walked, slow, calm, unhurried, like a man going for a pleasant evening stroll. Angulimala saw him from a distance, a solitary monk walking alone through his forest. He unsheathed his sword, gleaming and hungry. He began to run. "Stop!" he bellowed. "Stop, monk!" He ran faster. And then something impossible happened. No matter how fast he ran, he could not close the distance between himself and the walking monk. His legs churned and his chest heaved and the sweat poured down his face, and yet the monk kept pulling away, just walking, barely seeming to move, and yet always just out of reach. Angulimala's mind cracked with confusion. "Stop!" he screamed in desperation. The Buddha stopped. He turned around. He looked at the murderer with eyes that held no trace of fear. Only curiosity, only love. "I have stopped, Angulimala," he said quietly. "I have stopped forever. I have stopped harming all living beings. It is you who continue to harm who have not stopped." The words fell into Angulimala's chest like drops of cool water into a furnace. He stood there, sword raised, unable to bring it down. He had killed 999 people, and not one of them had looked at him this way. Not one had spoken to him this way. He saw himself suddenly as if in a clear mirror, and what he saw horrified him. The sword fell. He fell to his knees. He wept. He begged to become a monk. The Buddha received him. In the days that followed, Angulimala walked into the town of Savatthi on his alms round, and the people ran from him in terror, hurling stones and insults. He returned to the Buddha with blood on his shaved head, his robe torn, his bowl broken. The Buddha looked at him and said, "Bear it, Brahmin. Bear it. You are reaping in this life the fruit of what could have kept you burning for eons." And Angulimala bore it, with patience, with dignity, with growing peace. The man who had been a forest terror became a healer. It was said that he later helped a woman through a difficult labor with nothing more than a blessing, and that the child was born safely. He who had only taken lives had become one who helped bring life safely into the world. Now let us rest for a moment in the story of Kisagotami, Gautama, a story so tender it has been told for 25 centuries and will be told for 25 more. Kisagotami Gautama was a young woman from a poor family. She had married into a better family and for a long time was looked down upon as an outsider. But then she gave birth to a son, and suddenly she was welcomed. Suddenly she had value in their eyes. The child was the light of her world. Then one morning, the child fell ill. Within days, he was dead. He was barely old enough to walk. Kisagotami Gautama refused to believe it. She carried the small, still body in her arms and went from house to house in the village, weeping, asking everyone she met, "Please, give me medicine for my child. He is sick. He needs medicine." People looked at her with pity and grief. "Your child is dead, poor woman," they said. "There is no medicine for that." She would not hear it. She kept walking. She kept asking. Someone, a wise, gentle someone, said, "Go to the teacher, the one they call the Buddha. He has medicine for all sicknesses. Go to him." She walked to where the Buddha was sitting beneath a tree. She pushed through the gathered monks. She knelt before him. She held out her dead child. "Give me medicine," she begged. "Please, he is my son." The Buddha did not say he is dead. He did not say nothing can be done. He looked at her with eyes full of compassion. Not the shallow pity of someone who wants discomfort to end, but the deep compassion of one who can hold another's suffering without turning away. "I can give you medicine," he said. "But first, I need one small thing. Bring me a mustard seed, just one, from a house where no one has ever died. Can you do that?" Kisagotami's eyes lit with hope. Mustard seeds. Every house had mustard seeds. She turned and ran. She knocked on the first door. "Do you have a mustard seed?" "Yes, of course," the woman said, going to fetch one. "Has anyone ever died in this house?" Kisagotami asked. The woman's face fell. "My mother died last spring," she said softly. "My father, the winter before." Kisagotami thanked her and moved on. The next house. Mustard seed? Yes. Death? Yes, my husband 3 years ago. The next? My son, my daughter, my grandmother. She went to every house in the village. She went to the next village. She walked all day, and everywhere she knocked, death had been there before her. Every house had its grief. Every family had its losses. Every door opened onto a story of someone loved and gone. As the sun set and the stars began to appear, Kisagotami sat down at the edge of a field. She set her son's body down gently beside her. She looked at the stars, and slowly, like the tide coming in, the truth reached her. She was not alone in her grief. She had never been alone. Grief was the invisible thread that connected every human heart. Death was not a punishment visited upon her alone. It was the condition of all who are born. She had thought she was the only one drowning, and she had found that everyone was swimming in the same sea. Her heart, which had been frozen, cracked open. She wept, not the mad, desperate weeping of denial, but the deep, releasing weeping of someone who has understood. She carried her son to the charnel ground and laid him down with gentleness and love. She returned to the Buddha. "I have found no mustard seed," she said. "No house without death." The Buddha nodded. "You have brought yourself the medicine," he said. "Sit with me." And she sat, and she was healed. The Buddha walked with women when the world said he should not. In his time and place, women were considered spiritually inferior, incapable of the same liberation as men. He challenged this with a simple, radical act. He ordained women. His own foster mother, Mahapajapati Gautami, the woman who had raised him after his mother's death, came to him 3 times and asked to be ordained as a nun. 3 times he gave no immediate answer. But Ananda intervened, asking on her behalf, "Are women capable of enlightenment?" The Buddha said yes. Then Ananda asked, "Then why not ordain them?" The Buddha agreed. Mahapajapati and 500 women became the first bhikkhunis, the first ordained nuns in the history of any world religion. It was not without complexity or controversy, but the act itself, in the world of the 5th century BCE, was an act of profound and courageous respect for the human spirit regardless of the body it inhabited. He returned to Kapilavastu only once, years after his awakening. King Suddhodana, his father, the man who had built the golden cage, The man who had tried so hard to keep him from this path was dying. The Buddha came to him. He sat beside the old king's bed and taught him the Dharma. And Suddhodana, the warrior king who had wanted only a royal heir, listened with an open heart and achieved awakening before his final breath. He died in peace. The Buddha held his hand. He met Yasodhara, the woman he had left sleeping with their newborn son. There are no records of what happened between them in that reunion. The sacred texts are quiet about it, but what is recorded is this. Yasodhara, rather than greeting him with anger or recrimination, prostrated herself before him and held his feet in silence. Later, she became a nun. She achieved enlightenment. She walked the same path he had walked and arrived at the same destination. Perhaps that was always the whole story. His son Rahula was 7 years old when the Buddha came back. Yasodhara sent the boy to his father with instructions. Go and ask your father for your inheritance. The child went to the golden-robed monk and said, Give me my inheritance, father. The Buddha looked at the boy. Then he gave him a monk's robe, and he was ordained as a novice monk that very day. His inheritance was not gold or land. His inheritance was the Dharma. It was everything. For 45 years, he was the most remarkable human being the world had ever seen. He had no army, no palace, no treasury. He owned a robe, a bowl, and a needle. He slept on the ground. And yet, kings bowed to him. Armies stopped fighting because of him. Murderers became healers. Grieving mothers found peace. The caste system, which had divided human beings into rigidly separated categories of worth, bent in his presence. He ate from the same bowl as the scavenger and the Brahmin. He touched the untouchable. He spoke to the condemned. He never raised his voice. He never struck anyone. He never demanded loyalty. He only offered light, and the light did the rest. Time flows like a river. The same river that carried Siddhartha away from his palace on that moonlit night all those decades ago had continued to flow. And now that river was nearing the sea. The Buddha was 80 years old, 80 years of this beautiful, impermanent life. 80 years of the body rising and sleeping, of feet on dusty roads, of bowls held out in morning mist, of voices in evening groves, of rain on the roof of some forest shelter. He had walked thousands of miles. He had spoken millions of words. He had touched countless lives. And now the body, which had served him so faithfully, even after he had once almost starved it to death, was wearing out at last. Like an old cart held together with straps and habit rather than original strength, it was beginning to come apart. He knew. He had known for some time, and he was not afraid. He called his beloved Ananda, who had been at his side for 25 years. Ananda, who had memorized every discourse, every conversation, every gentle correction. Ananda, who had wept for him and laughed with him and never once left his shadow. Ananda, the Buddha said, Let us travel to Kushinagar. And so they set out, the old luminous teacher and his devoted companion, on one last journey through the countryside of the Vajjan Republic. It was the rainy season. The fields were flooded and green, the roads soft with mud. Mango trees dripped with moisture. The sky was the deep gray of monsoon clouds. The earth smelled of rain and wet grass and something old, something permanent beneath all the change. As they walked, the Buddha spoke to Ananda often. He spoke of the Dharma. He spoke of the community. He spoke of what would happen after he was gone. I have kept nothing hidden in my fist, Ananda, he said. I have withheld nothing. The Dharma I have taught is complete. Let the Dharma itself be your teacher when I am gone. Let the Dharma be your island. Let it be your refuge. Ananda listened, but his heart was beginning to tremble. He had heard the words, when I am gone, too many times in recent weeks. He did not want to hear them. He could not imagine a world without this voice, without these eyes, without this presence. One morning, the Buddha made a declaration that shook Ananda to his bones. Ananda, he said, the Tathagata could, if he wished, remain in this world for a full aeon. He paused. But I will not. In 3 months, I will enter parinirvana. Ananda heard this and walked away in a daze. He leaned against a nearby building and wept. He wept like a child. He wept the way you weep when you know that a light is about to go out and the dark will be complete. The Buddha found him. He sat beside him. He said, Enough, Ananda. Do not grieve. Have I not always told you? Of all things that arise, dissolution is inherent. It is the nature of all conditioned things to cease. How could it be otherwise? They continued walking. They came to a town called Pava. A kind man named Kunda, a blacksmith, a devoted lay follower of the Buddha for many years, heard that the teacher had arrived. He ran to invite the Buddha and all the monks to take their meal at his house. The Buddha accepted with his usual grace. Kunda prepared the meal with great care and love. Among the dishes he served was a preparation called sukara madava. Scholars have debated across the centuries what this dish was, some saying it was mushroom preparation, some that it involved pork or truffles. The exact nature of the dish is uncertain. What is certain is this: the Buddha, looking at the dish, somehow knew. He told Kunda to serve it to him alone and to bury what remained. He did not explain why. He simply ate it. Shortly afterward, the Buddha fell gravely ill. A violent illness seized his body, pain, bleeding, a sapping of all remaining strength. He was 80 years old, and his body had no reserves left. He did not cry out. He did not blame Kunda. He gathered his remaining strength and said to Ananda, "We must go on to Kushinagar." As they walked, the Buddha stopped often to rest. At one stopping place, he asked Ananda to fold his robe into 4 layers and lay it beneath a tree, so he could sit and rest his aching back. Ananda did so tenderly. The Buddha sat. He asked for water from a nearby stream. Ananda hesitated. 500 carts had just crossed through the stream, and the water was turbid. But he went, and when he reached the stream, the water had miraculously cleared. He brought water to his teacher. The Buddha drank. At every pause, the Buddha thought of Kunda. He told Ananda, "After I am gone, if anyone blames Kunda for my death, you must protect him. Tell them, Kunda's offering was not a misfortune. It was a great merit." There are only 2 meals in the entire history of a Buddha that are equal in merit. The first is the meal offered before his enlightenment. The second is the meal offered before his parinirvana. Kunda's offering is the second of these. It is beyond price. They arrived at the Sal Glove near Kushinagar. The Buddha looked at the grove, the tall, straight sal trees, their trunks silver gray in the evening light, their canopies spreading wide and cool and welcoming. "Here, Ananda," he said, "prepare a bed for me between these 2 trees, facing north. I am weary." Ananda prepared the bed, folding the robes with trembling hands, smoothing the surface again, as if the perfection of the bed could somehow stop what was coming. The Buddha lay down in the lion's posture, on his right side, one foot resting lightly on the other, his head resting on his right hand, his face serene. And then the sal trees bloomed. Out of season, inexplicably, impossibly, the trees burst into full extravagant flowers. Great cascades of blossoms fell upon the Buddha's resting body. Golden flowers and petals of white and cream. They drifted down like a blessing, like a farewell, like the universe's own tribute to the one who had understood it most deeply. Heavenly music, the texts say, floated on the air from some unseen source. The whole grove was trembling with beauty. The monks and nuns gathered. Word spread through the surrounding villages. People came, farmers, merchants, children on their fathers' shoulders, old women who had heard him speak 30 years ago. They filled the grove and spilled out beyond the trees. They were quiet. They did not know what to say. There was nothing to say. Ananda could not hold himself together. He slipped away to the edge of the grove and pressed himself against a tree trunk and sobbed. The Buddha noticed his absence. He called for him. Ananda came, his face wet, his eyes red. The Buddha looked at him with great tenderness. "Ananda, dear Ananda, do not weep, do not grieve. Everything dear and beloved must be separated from us. This is the nature of all things that arise. You have served me for many years with acts of love, with body, speech, and mind. You have never failed in kindness. That is immeasurable. Set yourself free from grief now. Work for your own liberation." Ananda composed himself. He performed one last act of service. He stood at the entrance of the grove and announced to the gathered people that the Tathagata was entering his final night, and that anyone with a question should come forward now, so they would not regret the silence later. 3 times he made this announcement. 3 times the assembly was silent. The monks had no doubts. The path was clear to them. Then came an elderly wanderer named Subhata, who had heard that a great teacher was dying and had rushed to see him. Ananda tried to turn him away. "The teacher is resting, the teacher is ill." But the Buddha overheard and said, "Let him come, Ananda. He will not trouble me." Subhata came forward and asked his question, and the Buddha gave him his final personal teaching. Subhata became the last person to be ordained by the Buddha himself, the last person to receive the gift directly from its source. The night deepened. The grove was silver with moonlight. The sal blossoms continued to fall, slow and silent as snow. The Buddha looked out at the assembled community one final time. He said, "Behold, O monks, I say to you, all conditioned things are subject to decay. Work out your salvation with diligence." They were his last words. He closed his eyes. He withdrew his attention from the external world. He entered the first jhana, the first state of meditative absorption. Then the second, then the third, then the fourth. He moved through states of consciousness as a pearl diver descends through water, deeper, quieter, more profound at every level. He passed through the formless absorptions, the sphere of infinite space, the sphere of infinite consciousness, the sphere of nothingness, the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. And then, like a flame that ceases to burn, not because it was blown out, but because there was no more fuel to consume, the Buddha entered parinirvana. The earth trembled. The great trees shook as if in grief. The sal blossoms fell in one great cascade, and then everything was still. Everything was very, very still. He was gone, and he was everywhere. Buddha wept. Mahakassapa, who was far away when the moment came, suddenly felt the shift in the world and knew. Monks who had achieved great equanimity sat in silent, unshakable peace. Those who had not yet conquered grief wept openly. Children in the surrounding villages felt something change in the air without knowing what it was. In the days that followed, his body was treated with the honors of a universal monarch. It was wrapped in hundreds of layers of cloth. It burned with a sacred fire. The relics were distributed across the ancient world. Stupas were built, shrines were raised, and the teachings, the Dharma, were gathered, verified, memorized, and passed from generation to generation in an unbroken chain of human voices. For 2,600 years, that chain has not broken. The teachings live today in the great monasteries of Thailand, where orange-robed monks wake before dawn to chant the ancient Pali suttas. They live in the Zen gardens of Japan, where a single raked line in the gravel speaks of the middle way. They live in the Tibetan Thangka paintings, where the serene face of the Buddha looks out through layers of gold and lapis. They live in the meditation halls of California and London and São Paulo, where ordinary people in ordinary clothes sit in silence and follow their breath. They live in every moment that a human being chooses kindness over cruelty, presence over distraction, compassion over contempt. The Bodhi Tree still stands in Bodh Gaya, or rather, a descendant of it does. A great spreading fig tree, grown from the cutting of the original, its heart-shaped leaves still whispering in the morning breeze, still offering shade to those who sit beneath it with a burning question in their hearts. Pilgrims come from across the world to sit beneath that tree. Some weep, some smiles, some sit in silence, not knowing exactly why they are moved, only knowing that something in this place is alive. Something in this place is still awake. And so, dear traveler, we walked the whole path together tonight. We walked from the palace to the forest. We have walked from luxury to liberation, from sorrow to stillness, from the desperate search for a young prince to the unshakable peace of the awakened one. We sat beneath the Bodhi tree as the stars wheeled overhead, and the morning star rose in triumph. We sat in the deer park as the first words of the Dharma turned like a golden wheel in the evening air. We have walked the dusty roads of ancient India and sat at the feet of the greatest teacher the world has ever seen. And now the journey is complete. The grove is quiet. The sal blossoms have settled into the earth. The stars are deep and clear above you. The story of the Buddha is not a story from long ago and far away. It is your story. For the palace the Buddha left, that palace of comfortable numbness, of distraction, of noise, is one we all know. The suffering he sought to understand, the ache of impermanence, the hunger for something real, the grief of losing what we love, is the suffering we all carry. And the peace he found beneath the tree, that peace is not foreign to you. It is not located in ancient India, or in 2,600 years ago, or in a language you do not speak. It is located here, in this breath, in this body, in this quiet moment before sleep. The Buddha did not ask anyone to worship him. He asked people to look, to see, to wake up, not to some cosmic truth beyond reach, but to the simplest, most immediate truth of all, that suffering exists, that it has a cause, and that the cause can be released. He called himself a physician, not a god. He said, "Here is the disease, here is the cause, here is the cure, here is the medicine. Take it. Tonight, the medicine is sleep. Tonight, the medicine is still. Tonight, medicine is the simple, revolutionary act of letting everything go. Just for these hours, just for this night, and allowing yourself to rest completely in the arms of the present moment. Feel your body now. Feel how heavy it has become. Beautifully, wonderfully heavy. Feel the surface beneath you holding you completely and without condition. You do not have to do anything to deserve this rest. You do not have to earn it. It is yours simply because you exist. The earth supports you the way it supported that prince beneath the Bodhi Tree. Without question, without judgment, without condition. Notice your breath, the breath that has been with you since the moment you were born. The breath that will be with you until the very end. This breath does not worry. This breath does not plan. This breath does not remember or anticipate. This breath only does one thing. It arrives and then it goes. And then it arrives again. In this simple, faithful rhythm, there is everything you need to know about the nature of existence. Let these words carry you down into sleep now. Let them be like soft stones sinking into a deep, still lake. Let them settle into your body and dissolve, leaving only their warmth behind. Breathe in peace and breathe out the day. You have carried enough today. Set it down now. Everything that happened is already in the past, and the past cannot harm you here. The day is done. You are safe. All things are impermanent. This tiredness that you feel will pass. The worries that seem so large will soften by morning light. Nothing stays the same. Not suffering, not joy, not this moment of heaviness. Let it flow through you like water through open hands. Compassion holds you. Right now, in this moment, there are people all over the world who are lying down as you are lying down, breathing as you are breathing, letting go as you are letting go. You are not alone in your tiredness. You are not alone in your searching. The whole human family rests together in the dark. The breath is always there. If your mind wanders, and it will, because that is what minds do, simply return to the breath. Don't struggle. Don't scold yourself. Just return the way you return to a warm fire after stepping outside into the cold. The breath is always there. The present moment is always here. You are enough, exactly as you are at this moment, with all your imperfections and unfinished business and unanswered questions. You are enough. The Prince Siddhartha did not have to be perfect to awaken. He only had to be honest. Be honest with yourself tonight. You are tired. You are human. You have done your best. That is enough. The past is a dream. The future is a dream. Only this breath is real. Only this moment, soft and quiet as a feather, drifting down through the dark air, is real. You are here. You are present. You are alive. Let that be enough. You are made of kindness. Beneath every layer of habit and fear and story, your truest nature is warmth. The same warmth that radiated from the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree. The same warmth that Siddhartha Gautama found at the edge of a field when grief became compassion. The same warmth that lives in every human heart, waiting to be found. Let the body rest. It has carried you faithfully all day, through every step, every task, every conversation, every moment of effort. Honor it now with stillness. Let it be heavy. Let it sink. Let it be cared for by this night. Peace is your original nature, not something you have to find, not something you have to earn or deserve or travel a great distance to reach. It is here, beneath the noise, waiting the way a still lake waits beneath the wind. When the wind stops, the surface clears, and you can see all the way to the bottom. Let the wind stop now. Nothing is required of you in this moment. No decisions to make, no problems to solve, no emails to answer, no words to say. Simply exist, simply breathe, simply be. May you be well. These words, the oldest, simplest blessing in the Buddhist tradition, are offered to you now, from this voice, from this story, from across the centuries. May you be well. May whatever aches find ease tonight. May you be happy, not the frantic, searching happiness of wanting more, but the quiet, contented happiness of resting in exactly what is. May you wake up tomorrow with a small, simple joy in your heart. May you be free from suffering. May the weight you carry grow lighter. May the fears that have visited you become smaller. May the knot in your chest slowly, gently, gracefully untie itself in the hours of sleep. May you rest in ease, deep, untroubled, restorative ease, the kind of sleep that heals, the kind of rest that renews, the kind of quiet that the Buddha found beneath his tree and carried with him for 45 years across every dusty road in India. The awakened one smiles on you tonight. Somewhere, across all the centuries and all the miles, the gentle revolution of one man's compassion is still unfolding, still touching lives, still turning towards suffering with open eyes and an open heart. You are part of that unfolding. Simply by listening tonight, simply by resting in the story of a life lived in service to truth and love, you have touched the Dharma. You have been touched by it. Drift now, float. The river is wide and the current is gentle. There is nothing ahead to fear and nothing behind to regret. There is only this soft, dark, breathing moment, and then the next one, and then the deep, undreaming stillness of sleep. Thank you for traveling with us tonight. Thank you for letting this story be yours for these hours. Thank you for resting in the life of one of history's most compassionate souls and allowing his peace to become, in some small way, your peace. This has been Unlocking Great Minds. We will be here when you return, with more journeys, more voices, more lives that change the world with love rather than force, with gentleness rather than power, with wisdom rather than noise. Until next time, dream gently, dream deeply, and know that in you too, there is an awakened mind waiting to bloom. Good night.